Blackmagic, Sony, Canon, Panasonic. Which camera is the right camera to use with your ATEM switcher? Well, there are three main cameras that I use with my ATEM live streaming switchers, and I'm going to share all three of them with you and explain why I like to use them. But first, this video is sponsored by Riverside. Riverside is one of my favorite tools. I've actually been using this for a few years now, and it allows me to record people remotely. Now, I'm not talking about something like Zoom where you just record their video. This allows me to record ISOs. So if you are a fan of the ATEM switchers, and if you use the ISO model of the switcher, you know that you can record an isolated video feed of each camera input. Well, Riverside does just that. It creates a virtual studio, and I'm going to share with you a little bit more on what that looks like in just a little bit. But let's dive into the cameras first, and then we'll talk about that. So cameras-wise, I've been a Canon fanboy through and through for a very long time. And whether or not there is a right or wrong is truly up to you, your setup, and what your live stream needs. Now, personally, I'm a fan of the Canon color science. Some people will talk about the types of inputs and outputs that the cameras have, but at the end of the day, for me, I just have a certain look that I enjoy. So my lineup of cameras is all going to be Canon for the purposes of this video. The first camera that I like to use is a PTZ style camera, and that is the Canon CRN300. Now, there is also a 500 and 700, so bigger sibling version of this camera. But the one reason why I really like the PTZ style of cameras is because I can place these hundreds of feet away. I can control it over an Ethernet cable. It also sends power to it, so I don't have to supply a power outlet to this. I can power this from a couple hundred feet away. And these cameras have both SDI and HDMI output on the back of the camera. So that makes my life so much easier when it comes to running a video feed over a long distance back to my ATEM switcher. Now, I could also look into things like an NDI decoder and just use the Ethernet cable, but personally, I'm running an Ethernet cable to power and control it, and an SDI cable so that I can get the video feed back to my switcher. Now, why do I like this camera? Well, for one, it's robotically controlled, so I can sit with a joystick in the back of the room. It's got a 20x zoom. I can zoom all the way into the front of the room. I can get my close-up shots. I can go ahead and program in and dial in some wide shots or some moving shots where there's like a nice sweeping motion, and it just runs that program all from the control surface that comes with these cameras. So personally, I'm a huge fan of that type of camera capability, but there are some downsides. For one, the sensor sizes on these. You'll notice that in lower light scenarios, especially with the N300 model, not so much in the 500s or 700s, but you might start to run into a little bit of trouble in some dimly lit rooms, especially if you're zoomed in all the way, where your aperture has to close down a little bit so that it can't let in as much light. So that is one obstacle that you'll find with these. The other is that I have to run two cables to this, at least with my current setup, an Ethernet cable and an SDI cable. That might be annoying for some people, but I have some SDI and Ethernet combo cables that I use typically, so they're attached together as one, and it's not really that big of a deal. Third and foremost is that this camera is not operated by an operator who can just change out the lenses or tweak it or adjust it. And the particular lens that's built into this, due to the nature of the lens not being interchangeable, might not get as tack sharp of a look that you might be used to with some of the other lenses in other cameras. But all in all, the color science in this, the BT709 picture profile, is going to match, for the most part, the 709 picture and color profiles that I'll get out of my other Canon cameras. Got some wide DR, so it allows me to have a little more flexibility in the highlights and the shadows. And overall, this is a fantastic camera to put into those tight and hard to reach spaces where I can just pop it up on a C-stand and have full control over it to be able to get my shots. So that is the first camera that I like to use. The second camera that I like to use is a little bit old school in a sense. So if you remember back in the day, we had camcorders, and they're not as popular now because the DSLR craze and then the mirrorless craze. But the camcorder is something that I typically use on some of my events and conferences, like this one. This is the Canon XA55. And it's got a big brother that's out now. It's the Canon XA70 and 75. The 75 model has SDI, the 70 model has HDMI, but they basically have the same guts inside. Now this has a large 1-inch sensor, which allows me a little bit more flexibility in a low light setting. The other thing is this has a servo zoom. So having such a wide range of zoom, going from a wide shot all the way to zoomed in a close-up shot at the front of the room on a speaker at a podium, this gives me a ton of flexibility. Compared to the mirrorless or DSLR lenses, when I'm zooming with this, it's nice and smooth because it's a servo zoom. There are some servo cinema zoom lenses that you can get, but they are very expensive. For the cost of one of these cameras, it really gives me a lot of flexibility. I also get SDI output from it, so I don't have to worry about converting HDMI to get it into my switcher. So again, par for the course, this gives me almost everything that I need, and it's got 2 XLR inputs. So if I had to send audio through the camera, I can do that. Nice, compact, very easy to take. Now let's jump into a little bit about Riverside.
Welcome to Riverside. This is your online podcast and video recording studio where you can record studio quality without actually having the studio. So you've heard me talk a lot about having a studio space, but what if you could have a virtual studio space where you could have people who call in, interview each other, and you can record ISOs. Yep, you heard me right. ISO video files and audio files of each person in the room so that you can edit them later. On top of that, it's got all of these really cool features such as being able to record, edit, separate the tracks, and one of my favorites, transcriptions. So they have an AI engine that will support over 100 languages and transcribe all of your content. Then you can take it into their Magic editor, and with Magic Clips, it will actually create the short form clicks for you with a single click. So the AI analyzes it, it finds the most important parts of your video, and it picks and chooses where to pull the shorts from. Then you can take the transcription, turn it into captions, and you've got social media videos that are ready to go without having to do any additional editing work, without having to take it into your video editing software, and it's all right here in Riverside. Let me go ahead and show you real quick what it looks like. When I log in, I get taken to a dashboard, and on that dashboard, I can see studios that I've made in the past, or I can simply make a new studio. Once I make my studio and give it a name, I can go ahead and choose if I want to do an audio only or an audio and video recording. Then I can enter into the studio right on the spot. I can type in my name and I'll select whether or not I am using headphones. I'll say I am not using headphones, and I'll choose my camera, microphone, and join studio. Hey, that's me. I'm in the studio. So from here, I get an invite link and I can invite anyone to this studio space. And this allows me to send someone a link that brings them into the studio and records their video and their audio as an ISO. Or right over here, I get the option to bring them in as an audience member or a producer where they aren't recorded, but they can sit in on the call. Now, the beauty of this is that it uploads while we are on the call, and I can see all sorts of information. I can even control their audio levels if I determine that their sound levels are coming in too loud or too low. And I can see right here what camera they're using, what mic they're using, the quality of the camera recording, and there's some cool little features like removing background noise. You can rename and label all of your recordings. You can tweak the settings, everything from right here in the studio. Riverside is a perfect all-in-one solution if you're trying to record people virtually. So, if you want to learn more about Riverside, head on over to the link that's below this video, and you'll be able to sign up and join Riverside today. Again, that link is just below this video in the description. Now, back to the good stuff.
Riverside is an awesome tool, and I've been using it for years. I highly encourage you, go ahead and click that link down below in the description if you want to check it out. Now, third, the final camera that I use on many of my live streams. You can't actually see it right now because it's the one that I'm using right there. My main camera for a lot of my shoots is the Canon C70. The only real downside to this camera is that it doesn't have SDI output, so I do have to take an HDMI cord out of it convert it to SDI before I send it back to my live streaming switcher. So although it is my favorite camera and it allows me to use the interchangeable Canon lenses, I put the adapter on it so I can use the Canon EF lenses. And that allows me to get kind of that real shallow depth of focus, almost like what you see right here where the background's like a little bit blurred out. That's the real reason why I like to use the mirrorless and the cinema cameras. It just gives me a really nice, sharp depth look to it for all of my shots. So that is my third and final and really favorite camera out of them all. I will say that that is the one that probably has to be operated the most. So you do have to adjust things like ISO, aperture, shutter speed, frame rate. You have to set everything properly. And then because that lens is either a manual focus lens, depending on the lens that you got, or it is a zoom lens, it gives me some range. So I need to have an operator on that camera. Those are the three cameras that I really like to use on my live streams. It allows me to come with a really nice package for my clients. It's for the most part compact, but it definitely requires all the cables, all the adapters, and everything else to go with it. But those three are my top three cameras that I recommend when you are out there live streaming. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back in the next one. So that I can let you know when I have more videos playing, can you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button down below this video? That helps me out big time, and it'll also notify you so that when you want to come back and watch more videos, we'll be here waiting for you. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.